Picture a busy city street. You've got cars rushing by, people going about their day. Now, sitting in one of those cars is a 14-year-old girl named Rohini, and she's there with her mother. They're just watching this scene unfold right on the side of the road. A lady has pulled up in her own car, popped the trunk, and she's literally pulling out bags of food, methodically feeding the stray dogs, cats, and cattle wandering the neighborhood. It's a totally everyday scene, right? Something you've probably witnessed 100 times in your own city. But in this explainer, we're going to look at how this brief, seemingly ordinary little moment actually sparks a really profound debate about morality, action, and human nature. We are going to explore that tricky space between passing judgment and taking actual action. Okay, let's dive into this. Because Rohini's immediate reaction, it is incredibly relatable. She doesn't look at this lady with admiration. Nope. Instead, she looks at her with immediate cynicism. Rohini argues that, the more these stray animals are fed, the more they're going to reproduce. And without anyone to actually take long-term care of them, she asserts that just feeding is never enough. It's a highly pragmatic, logical critique. She's looking at this massive systemic issue and just immediately pointing out the flaws in this localized, imperfect solution. And right here is where Mama steps in, acting as the catalyst for our entire discussion today. Instead of just agreeing with Rohini's cynicism or, immediately shutting it down, she asks this brilliantly simple, probing question. So, is it a good thing or a bad thing to do? Wow. This single question totally transforms a casual observation from the passenger seat into a deep, ethical debate. It forces Rohini, and really by extension all of us, to just hit pause. We are all so quick to critique the mechanics of how someone is helping that we often completely forget to evaluate the fundamental morality of the act itself. Section 1. The Perfection Trap. So, Rohini's argument introduces us to what we call the perfection trap. This is that paralyzing idea that if an action isn't absolutely flawless, well, it's totally invalid. She argues that to truly help, these animals must be properly medicated, kept safely from traffic, and provided with permanent shelter. Objectively, she isn't wrong. These are fantastic, totally valid points for comprehensive animal welfare. But pragmatically, setting the bar for compassion so impossibly high for a single individual, it basically creates this theoretical wall that justifies not trying at all. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how Mama suddenly flips the script. Rohini has just laid out this brilliant, comprehensive plan for animal welfare, right? So Mama essentially says, great, if you know exactly what needs to be done, what stops you from doing that? It's an absolute masterclass in challenging complacency. Mama takes the spotlight off the lady feeding the dogs, and she shines it directly onto Rohini. If you are smart enough to see the gaps in the solution, well, why aren't you stepping up to fill them? Section 2. The Anatomy of an Excuse. You see, when faced with direct moral accountability, our brains immediately generate this rapid-fire list of practical limitations just to shield our conscience. Rohini immediately falls back on feelings of being totally overwhelmed. She says, how can I ever provide for so many? Or, I have no time for this, I have so much to study. These are classic defenses of scale. But Mama? She counters with actionable, civic-minded solutions. She doesn't tell Rohini to go out and personally build a shelter. She says, discuss it with the zonal officer in the local municipal office. Try to find out a solution. Do your bit. She takes a massive, overwhelming problem and breaks it right down into small, actionable steps. This brings Mama to a very sharp, defining lesson about how we actually choose to move through the world. It's the ultimate battle between the critic and the contributor. Mama warns Rohini to never, ever be the person who just stands on the sidelines, passing snide comments or judgments. I mean, it is incredibly easy and very comfortable to stand on the periphery of society and just point out what everyone else is doing wrong, isn't it? It requires absolutely zero vulnerability. But learning to participate and doing your bit, that is difficult. It means getting your hands dirty and accepting that your contribution might just be imperfect. Section 3. Ignore or impact. This brings us to the philosophical climax of their conversation. When you walk out your front door and you see everyday suffering, what do you actually do? Mama summarizes it perfectly. She says, either you let it be the way it is and ignore, or jump into it and try to solve and create an impact. So the crucial point is this stark dichotomy. There is no magical middle ground where you get to do nothing but still feel intellectually superior by criticizing those who try. Mama firmly believes the world will never become a better place if people simply choose to ignore the suffering around them. And that brings us right back to the lady with her car trunk open, feeding the animals on the street. Mama urges respect for her, not because her solution of feeding the strays is flawless, and not because it magically solves the systemic issue of animal homelessness, but simply because she felt deeply about something, and she absolutely refused to ignore it. She decided to do something. In a world full of critics, taking action, even totally imperfect action, is worthy of profound respect. But Rohini still has her pragmatic shield up, she counters, but that can create problems for others, focusing strictly on human convenience. Mama immediately challenges this inherently selfish view. She points out, but she is solving the problem for the animals. It's this beautiful reminder that solving a problem for an animal is just as valid a pursuit as solving a problem for a person. She reminds her daughter that the world, well, it belongs to all creations of nature. Section 4. Our collective responsibility. Faced with Mama's unyielding moral clarity, Rohini finally drops that defensive shield. She confesses, "The reality is that I feel for these animals and am very sad to see them hungry, munching on plastics, or hurt." This right here reveals the underlying truth of all her earlier arguments. Rohini isn't actually cynical, and she definitely isn't cold. Quite the opposite, she is deeply empathetic. Her intense sadness and the sheer, overwhelming scale of the issue just made her retreat into harsh judgment. It was literally a defense mechanism to protect her from feeling the pain of those animals. And this brilliantly illustrates Mama's core philosophy, driving the final point home. She tells Rohini, at least accept that mankind is treating them unfairly, even though we have a lot of wastage. You can't just look the other way. I mean, we live in a society of immense excess and human wastefulness, yet we allow these creatures to starve on our streets, munching on discarded plastic. Accepting this reality is the absolute minimum requirement for a moral conscience. Which triggers a very quiet, very profound moment of self-reflection for a 14-year-old girl. Rohini asks, am I treating them unfairly? She isn't talking about humanity as some broad concept anymore. She is looking right in the mirror. She is realizing that by actively choosing to ignore the problem, by choosing to just pass snide remarks from the comfort of her car, her own inaction makes her complicit. She is part of the unfairness. Mama's final answer to her daughter is unflinching. She says, yes, you are. So figure out ways to help them instead. It's an incredibly powerful call to action. It strips away all the excuses of time, capacity, and the endless pursuit of perfection. And as we wrap up this explainer, I want to take Mama's mirror and turn it outward, right at you. When you look at the imperfect solutions in your own community, are you standing on the sidelines passing judgment? When you see a problem that just feels way too big to solve completely, do you use that as an excuse to do nothing at all? Are you treating them unfairly? Take a moment. Step out of the perfection trap and figure out your way to make an impact instead.